and a good morning, good afternoon, and a very good evening to you, all the good and wonderful people of the tube. Hope you're feeling grand and all is well in your world. Hello there, everybody. Today's video of the tube. Let me give you a bit of let me spin you a little yarn about how this video came to be. As you've seen the title, you know what this video is about. So let me spin you a yarn about how this came to be. End of last year, 2022. We were due to play the annual drum off at the #1 bar in Cleethorpes, and as usual at that gig, things get a bit tight on the ground. And but I wanted some effects for the big ending jam where there's a drum off and this, that, and the other. And usually what I do is I just plug straight into my amp. But this time I was like, I kind of want some effects, but I've got no space to work in, and I thought, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll program my Zoom. I've got a spare, Zoom G2.1U. I'll program that with a clean and a distortion wah, and I'll just use that because it's tiny. It won't take up any space. I can keep it out of the way. No one should trip over it. It's tiny. All will be well, and it sounds great, and I love it. And it's literally been the mainstay of my pedal board since 2005. So I set about messing around with a clean tone that I've had set on my Zoom G2 since 2005. Again, I'm a creature of habit. Once something works for me, I don't experiment with it. I don't change it. It just is that. That's what it is. Because that's just the way I work. Anyway, I started messing around with the compressor inside the Zoom G2, which I don't use for anything other than boost. Basically, I use it in the same way Andy Timmons uses a compressor, in the fact of I don't use the compression, I just use the level to drive the amp a bit harder. Anyway, on this occasion, I don't know why, again, because being a creature of habit, I don't change things, I decided to mess around with the compression. And I turned it up on this really clean sound. And there's like an amp model in here I use and stuff like that. I was using the Roland Jazz Chorus model I was using, and I hit a chord, and I was like, that almost sounds like John Frusciante's Blood Sugar Sex Magik tone, and the cogs started to go, and I was messing around with it a bit more, and I was like, that really sounds. Hang on a minute, that's really starting. It's not quite there, and it's not as distorted and driven. It was too clean, and I was like, but tonality wise, and the way the compressor's reacting with the amp and the guitar is very close to John's tone from that album. The way it's responding. So that was it. That was like the little kernel of grain, if you will, that set me off on, can the Zoom G2.1U do all the sounds of Blood Sugar Sex Magik? Just this one pedal. Can it do the clean under the bridge kind of tones? Can it do like sounds like Power Over Quality? Can it do distortion like Suck My Kiss? Can it do kind of like something like a pseudo I Could Have Lied guitar solo tone? It got me thinking. So I dove into the Zoom G2 and I set aside 4 little presets in Bank A, and I'm going to show you where I am today, PeopleTube. So, just give you an idea of what's going on. So, A0, I've got set up for a distortion. It's modelled on Suck My Kiss. And that's kind of like it's a distortion with chorus on it. And so that's what that is. A1 is just straight up cleanish tone with a chorus on top. A2 is just straight cleanish. And A3 is like a pseudo I Could Have Lied guitar tone. They're the 4 tones I'm going to show you today. Obviously, I can't play Chili Peppers riffs, so basically, I'm going to change a couple of notes in these things and fluke my way through it as best I can, because they need to be heard inside a context of Blood Sugar Sex Magik. If I start improvising something that doesn't sound like Blood Sugar Sex Magik, these tones aren't necessarily going to fit or work, and they won't give you a good idea. So I'm just going to basically screw up some Chili Peppers riffs from Blood Sugar Sex Magik and mess them around a bit, and so you can hear them in context. But PeopleTube, I'm very, very happy with where I am. And this is part 1. So over this year, or whenever I get a chance to, I'm going to try and refine this a bit more. So this is part 1 right now. So I feel it's as close as I can get right now, but I think I can get it better with time. So I'm just going to work at it, off camera and messing around in when I get spare time, and to see if I can get it any closer than I have already. So, also BoomerTube, at this point in time, you will see a picture of the settings that I have the Zoom G2 program to. So feel free to pause it on this. Feel free to pause it on that if you want to know the settings I've got. That's all of them. Also, I need to mention some of the settings in there in a minute. But let you know what's going on signal path wise. So we're going into the Marshall MG today. The orange CR120 does work for this, but it's a little bit darker than it needs to be. So we're going through the Marshall MG today. John used Marshalls on Blood Sugar Sex Magik. Well, John uses Marshalls full stop, pretty much, apart from the occasional Fender and Vox and whatever else he has lying around. But on Blood Sugar Sex Magik, John's mainly using 2 amps. Now, this was the first kind of stumbling block, if you will, and this is something you have to take into account, BoomerTube, and I had to take into account. John's guitar tone in Blood Sugar Sex Magik is made up of 2 amps. It's not 1 amp like we have today. So it's a blend of 2, and you can hear that really well if you go onto YouTube and go to the Blood Sugar Sex Magik isolated guitar tracks for Under the Bridge. You can hear left and right really separate. The one on the right's really sparkly and present, and the one on the left's got a bit more girth to it. Both sound fantastic together, but you can really distinguish it. It's 2 guitar amps making one sound, and they're hard pan left and right. So that was the first thing I had to kind of contend with, and I was thinking, well, I'll do what I can with 1 amp. Maybe at some point, BoomerTube, I'll plug in another amp, and we'll see what we can do. But for this point in time, we're just going to stick with 1 because I think I got really close with just 1 amp. So, but bear that in mind though. Bear that in mind when it comes down to the sound examples. Just to let you know how the Marshall sound. Like I say, the Marshall it's got the right sound. The Marshall's on OD1. I have the gain set at basically nothing. I call it 0.5 because it's not even 1. It's between basically 0 on the dial and 1. It's like basically in the middle, so 0.5. No bass, mids at 2 o'clock, no treble, no contour, channel volume is all the way up, no reverb on the amp. There is reverb coming from the pedal, which I'll talk about in a sec, which is really important, I feel. And then the master volume I've got at 1 because, like I say, it's 100 watt amp and it's loud as hell. We're miking up with 1 mic, SM57. It's not close mic'd, and it's just off the middle of the dust cover. I'm not sure where John's amps were mic'd in Blood Sugar Sex Magik. I don't know if anybody actually knows exactly where. I can guarantee they probably moved it day to day, depending on where sounded best for that sound, for that song and that sound on the day. But yeah, who knows? Anyway, I want to talk quickly about one of the most important things that I found with this sound. And that's the reverb. If you listen to the isolated guitar tracks, which is what I've been comparing my sounds to, because when you listen to the guitar in the mix, it's coloured by the mix. It's coloured by the bass guitar. It's coloured by the drums and the cymbals and the snare and that kind of thing. It's coloured by the vocals. And it makes it kind of changes the sound slightly. So I copied my sounds from the isolated guitar tracks. I wasn't listening to the rest of the band. I didn't want to hear them. I just want to hear John's guitar. And one thing I noticed with BoomerTube, you can really hear this kind of like the room sound. You can hear that room where they're recording. Especially when John kind of stops playing. In like certain little bits, you'll hear this kind of just... It's very short, but it's not like a slapback echo or a delay, but it's a very short kind of reverb. So, what I did in the Zoom G2 is I went inside the reverb section and dialed in a room reverb, and it's this. That's all it is, and it just gives something. That'll be peaking the camera, and you'll hear it better through the SM57 in a sec. But that was a game changer. Without that, it sounds really naff. Well, it doesn't sound naff, but it does sound empty. But with it, like I say, I don't know how well that's going to come out on camera, people with YouTube, but hopefully okay-ish. Like I say, you'll hear it better once we get switched to BSSM 57. But that was like a game changer. That was putting a room reverb in there. I was like, whoa! All of a sudden, the sound came to life. Without it, it was quite sterile, harsh, quite nasty. John's tone on Bloodsugar Says Magik is quite nasty anyway. But as soon as I put that room reverb on, I was just like, that's it. That's the thing. And again, is it precise? Not quite at this point in time, but it's close. It's close. It's not 100%. It's never going to be. But I think I can get it closer with time, like I say. Anyway, is there anything else I need to talk about? I don't think there is. Like I say, you've seen the settings. Like I say, they're back there. Feel free to pause that. That's how I've got the amp set up. The signal chain, like I say, is amp, zoom, guitar. That's it. There is nothing else. All this is not plugged in. You can see this is my guitar lead. And it just goes into the back here. And then that comes out. That's going into the Boss looper, which we're not using because we don't need to loop anything. And then from there, just straight into the Marshall. No effects loop nonsense, none of that. All into the front end, like I say, into OD1, which is set really clean. If I bypass the zoom quickly, this is the Marshall. Very clean. There is nothing there. It's just a platform for this to sit on top. It's a nice neutral clean tone for the zoom to sit on top and do its magic. So, and again, using my Mr. White today because, you know, it's Mr. White, isn't it? Anyway, without further ado, people tube, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to switch over to the SM57 and just let you hear the sounds. What the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to play, I think I'm going to start with the chorus clean tone. And I'm going to kind of fudge my way through some kind of like, you know, ruined Chili Peppers riffs from Bloodsugar Says Magik. Because, you know, copyright. Wouldn't it be just better? You know, free promotion, but hey, what do I know? You know, what do these, you know, multi-millionaires just want money all the time, but they don't want you to use whatever. Who cares? Anyway, yeah, I think I'm going to start on the clean, kind of dirty clean. Again, it's not clean. In the room, it's actually quite distorted, but say once you hear it through a microphone, it actually cleans up. It's that usual thing of John's tone, of his tone sounds a lot cleaner than it actually is. And it needs to be that way to have the power. If it was just as clean as it sounded, it'll have no power. It's simple as that. Anyway, we're going to start on the chorus one, then I might go to the chorus distortion, then I'll go to the under the bridge kind of clean thing, and then I'll finish up with like the I Could Have Lied pseudo guitar solo tone. That's the tone that I'm not 100% on at all at this point in time. It's something that I've just kind of like, I haven't spent as much time on that one as I have the others, and it's about, I don't know, 50% there. It's not exact, and again, it's never going to be exact. It's impossible. You get John Frusciante in that same room with the same gear, it's not going to sound like that anymore. But if the things are to be believed that John plugged straight into a mixing desk with that guitar solo, then it's going to be very, very difficult to kind of emulate some of that. But I feel I've got kind of close, but the other sounds are a lot closer to me, I feel, than that one. Anyway, what I'm going to do now is down tune my high E to E flat because, you know, and power over quality, and basically show you some of these sounds people. I'm just going to mess about for about 10-15 minutes or whatever, you know, with these sounds and just let you hear where I am. Again, like I say, this is just the zoom pedal. There is nothing else in line here. All this is not plugged in. None of this works. You know what I mean? Like I say, you've seen the guitar, you go straight into there, and then you go straight to the amp. There's nothing else. The SM57 is plugged straight into my Zoom Q8, and I won't be mixing it afterwards. What you hear is what it is. What the microphone hears is what you will hear. You know, I'm not going to tweak the EQ or anything like that. I don't do anything like that anyway. What you hear is what you hear. So just bear that in mind. Do I need to mention anything else before we get going with sounds? I swear there's something I forgot to mention. If I forgot to mention something and I remember, I'll mention it at the end. But at this point in time, let's make some noise with the Zoom G2. Can it be Blood Sugar Sex the ultimate Blood Sugar Sex Magik tone pedal? Can it be the ultimate Blood Sugar Sex Magik pedal? That's what I wanted to say. I'm great at English. okay, YouTube, there you go. That's the 4 sounds that I've got programmed. Let me know what you thought in the comment section below. How close do you think that is? Because to me, that sounds really close. Like, ridiculously close. Like, almost. You know, apart from the I Could Have Lied guitar solo tone, that's not quite there. That needs more work. But, you know, it's a good starting point. You know, it's not anywhere near, but it is a good starting point. But I feel the others are really, really close. The thing I forgot to mention, people that tuned at the beginning, is when you listen back to these... Well, there's 2 things. When you listen back to these sounds, if you want to compare them, please compare them to the isolated guitar tracks from Blood Sugar Sex Magik. Don't compare them to the actual track. Because John's guitar tone will get coloured by Flea's bass, Chad's drums, Anthony's vocal, and whatever else might be happening in the background. And what I did to get these sounds is I focused on the isolated guitar tracks of John's to dial this in. So if you want to compare them, go to the isolated guitar tracks. Another thing to note as well is I can pretty much guarantee the guitar tone we hear on Blood Sugar Sex Magik, as well as every album, to be honest with you, was messed with quite a bit in the control room and for mastering. It sounds to me like they've really high-passed John's guitar a lot. There's no bass frequencies on it. There's no bottom end to John's guitar, really. But there is a little bit, but it's the minimal amount, and it's exactly cut off exactly where it needs to be. Because the thing is, John's guitar doesn't need a great deal of bass on that album because that's where Flea lives. That's where Chad's bass drum and toms live. And if you're going to put loads of bass on the guitar, it's just going to get lost in that and it'll just make a mush. So it sounds to me like they've high-passed his guitar quite a lot, which again is a very common thing to do when you record guitar, isn't it? When you record a guitar, you always lop off all the low frequencies. I remember the session guitarist Tom Bukovac saying, you can never get rid of enough low end on the guitar when you're recording. And he's very right in that one. It is, the low end of the guitar is always the pig. To find the sweet spot of just getting rid of enough of it, but to maintain like the girth of the guitar sound, it's a tightrope, but it's good fun. Anyway, so it sounds to me like it's obviously been mixed, it's been mastered, it's been played with. Of course it has. So what it sounded like in the room, who knows? But it has been messed with. I mean, the thing is as well, John could have recorded the guitar part, gone back into the control room, and they could have gone, no, it's not cutting enough. Let's add some high end, bring out some of the mids, bring out some of the low, tweak it on the desk, and then all of a sudden it's not really resembling what it was in the room. Which is why I said in this video, people, I'm not going to edit this. I'm not editing the audio you hear. The audio you hear in this video is unedited. It's just SM58 going into the zoom camera. The sound you're hearing is coming from the amp, and that's it. I'm not putting any trickery or compression or studio nonsense on it. It is what it is. It goes straight to the Q8, straight to you. Obviously, there's YouTube compression, sadly, but I can't do anything about that. Anyway, but yeah, bear that in mind when you hear these recorded guitar tracks and stuff, bass tracks, drum tracks. You've got to bear in mind that these things have been messed with. They will have been messed with. It's very, 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 very rare, if never done, for your guitar to be recorded and then it's just as it is. There's always something that goes on it with compression, EQ. There could be effects put onto it. It's panned left and right, stuff like that. It's that stereo kind of spread thing. And I feel that's another thing that's missing from this sound, people tube, is the 2 amp stereo spread thing, which I want to do at some point with this sound is get another Marshall MG, set it up slightly differently, and record 2 cabs and pan them hard left and hard right and see if that kind of gets even closer. I'm also going to make the other MG a little bit brighter, a little bit treblier than the one I've got here. So, but yeah, anyway, and I apologise about any noise you can hear. Anyway, let me know what you thought, PeopleTube. To me, I'm just going to say it. Is that the ultimate Blood Sugar Sex Magik pedal? To me, yeah. It's all there. It's all there. The chorus, the dirty clean tones, the distortions. you know, I've yet to program a wah. I don't know if I mentioned that already. I haven't actually messed with the wah yet. John doesn't really use the wah a great deal on Blood Sugar Sex Magik. It's there every now and again. It's not... I mean, in all fairness, the most used pedal to me... Well, most used pedals to me on Blood Sugar Sex Magik are the DoD Chorus and the Dynacomp. I believe it was in Dynacomp. Correct me if I'm wrong. DS2, obviously, the Distortion. But there's so many kind of, like, cleanish passages on Blood Sugar Sex Magik. Excuse me, POG, I've just downed my cup of tea really fast before I'm talking, and that's not a good idea. And there's so many clean passages where it's mainly compressor and chorus. You know, you can they are the kind of like the mainstays of Blood Sugar Sex Magik, and the wah gets the look in on stuff like Psycho Sexy and guitar solos here and there, but and obviously DS2 in bits and pieces. But it's a very raw kind of cranked Marshall tone that sounds way cleaner than it actually is. And again, if you listen to those isolated guitar tracks, you can hear how distorted John's guitar actually is. But as soon as you put it in a mix with the drums and the bass, it sounds way cleaner. It's a weird thing, but again, microphones don't lie. You know what I mean? They can't lie. They hear what they hear, and they just go, well, this is what it is. You know, which is why it's always good when you think, you know, if you like the sound you got, is to record it and see what it actually sounds like, because your ears and your brain can kind of like distort it, whereas when you listen to it back, you go, oh, it sounds like that. You know, it's very strange. Anyway. And you can learn a lot from it as well. I learned to turn the bass off on all my amps. When I first got my Zoom Q8 and I started close miking, I realised that the bass... I always used to run bass on 10. No matter what the amp was, I used to turn the bass all the way up. And I soon found out that it was making a bit of a mess of the low end of my guitar sound. So now I don't use any bass at all. And again, you don't need to. You're a guitarist. You live in the mid-range. You don't live in the bass range. You don't need that on. And although John does have his bass turned up all the way, but that's because vintage Marshalls, they can be a bit weird with the bass. Anyway, that's another video altogether about bass styles. But I don't turn the bass on at all. And again, like I say, the guitar tracks in Blood Sugar Sex Magik sound really high-passed to me. So there's a lot of low end edited out of John's guitar, which again is it is the common practice to do in recording. You know, you always lop off the low end as much as you can without sacrificing the kind of the width of the girth, if you will, of the guitar tone. Anyway, without making it basically thin and weaselly. Anyway, that's it, PooTube. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. But I am blown away yet again by this gorgeous pedal. It is literally one of my favourite pedals of all time. It's just insane. And again, these are from like 2004, 2005. These are kind of like, you know, if you want to call it old technology, but they still do so much. I mean, when I was starting to get close on the sound, I was getting so excited. It was just like, oh my god, that's so close. It's so close. You know, is it 100%? No. Is it ever going to be? No. But can I get a bit closer? Yes. And that's the challenge we achieve. So no, let me know what your thoughts are below. Like I say, just to reiterate one more time, if you are going to compare the sounds to John, please do it with the isolated guitar tracks. Don't do it with the album versions with all the band. Do it to John's isolated guitar tracks. That's how I did it. And that's kind of where you'll get the best idea of, you know, where I am with it, if you will. But I feel I got really, really, really close, like extraordinarily close. It feels in the room, it feels really, it feels great. It really does feel great. And when it's recorded, it comes across like really well as well. It's a great guitar tone for recording. It really is a great guitar tone for recording. So I'm saying, I wrote all the settings down, and I'm going to save them. I'm going to leave it set up like that because, again, I'm going to use this for recording because it just sounds fantastic. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this vid, PooTube. Yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And yeah, I'll see you again for another video very, very soon. If you like the videos I do on this channel, please consider becoming a patron at Patreon. Links to that are down there, as well as links to my music that are down there on my Bandcamp, as well as links to my Instagram, where you can follow me on the Instas and the social media-ing thing, Ms. Bobs. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, PooTube, and I'll see you again. Have a great morning, afternoon, good evening. Goodbye now. One of the best pedals ever made. Zoom destroyed it when they made this thing.